it's not Bitcoin anymore.
Transaction costs are too high, velocity is too low.
We all want Bitcoin to scale.
But there are others in the community that disagree.
代码的权利是给核心开发者，然后投票权是矿工。
变成了一个大陆和
Blockstream 这两个公司之间的
恩怨。
祝大家好。
闷声发大财。
I guess it's a mistake to focus only on the Bitcoin blockchain.
I started getting letters from people. They'd say, "Are you Satoshi?"
You know, this Morristown train station is sort of historic in the sense that, you know, the research that we did was actually here in Morristown. Stuart would reverse commute every day from Manhattan. You know, it had gone about 20 years. And that's where we first met.
I was a young researcher at Bellcore, Bell Communications Research. And I met Scott when he came out to interview.
He was one of the first people I went to look up.
Is the building still the same, or it
Yep.
has been?
Stuart's offices were, where was your office? Like right about there. Before I joined Bellcore, it worried me that we were going to a fully digital document world.
Yes.
And that historically we wouldn't be able to look back at the documents and have any way to prove that they were the original documents or not. So the day I joined Bellcore, I filled out a document and it has a record of the fact that this was the problem I was working on already. Didn't know how to solve it, but I knew that Stuart...
Solve it.
These are two articles.
That's what we used to look like.
Oh, that's you guys?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We certainly talked about the problem back and forth. And of course, something that was prominent at the time was the concept of a digital signature. And we looked at using digital signatures to address the problem. The difficulty was a digital signature has a private part to it, essentially a password. And if someone discovers the password, then the signature is no longer good.
The signature, not it's no longer good, but anybody can produce a valid one.
And I said, we've got to find some way to eliminate the trust. And Stuart said, look, I just don't think there's any way to eliminate the trust entirely. Research labs are just, you know, maybe half a mile from here. So this was a regular place to come. Hi, we need a dish of mint chocolate chip, single.
As I remember, you know, he came in one day and said, now here's something we might do. I never heard about the ice cream. However, please enjoy your ice cream.
I think everybody has a different key moment because this was a very long process. But for me, the key moment was here. Stuart finally says, there's no way that you can make the system so that you don't have to trust anybody.
So let's prove it. I can't solve the problem, maybe nobody can.
I started thinking, but what if essentially everybody in the world was in on the conspiracy? Then it wouldn't be a conspiracy anymore. Where? There it is. Distribute trust by weaving records together. distribute trust in the widely witnessed events. And here's the ledger.
The way we ended up with a solution that we use one-way hash functions to group documents in the data structure for our purpose of timestamping. We froze documents using one-way hash functions, grouping documents in what's now called the blockchain. That solution was adopted directly by Satoshi Nakamoto as part of the Bitcoin system.
Is this the original paper, Scott?
Let me see if it's the same. Yeah, so this is the original article. So the first paper with the first insight about distributing the timestamping function to the entire world was in 1990. The complete solution of grouping things into what we call blockchain, we were talking about already, what was presented at a conference in 1991.
Did you invent the name blockchain?
No. It's actually in the comments in the code, Satoshi Nakamoto's first implementation of Bitcoin.
This house that surety was started, the first blockchain company.
Two guys who you see before you, Scott and myself.
Younger versions of them.
Younger version. There were no gray hairs visible on either of our heads 25 odd years ago when Surety, the first blockchain company, was operating in the basement of this house.
We originally were thinking of things like patents or movie scripts, something that you wanted to prove that you invented it before someone else or you wrote it before someone else.
Briefly, the company was not a wild success. Lots of good ideas do not see immediate adoption. Who knows what Satoshi might have done, because in fact our solution was not in widespread use.
I think what Satoshi came up with was a great way of building on top of this.
区块链就是这么诞生的。这段将近30年前的往事，在 Scott 和 Stuart 的口中依然栩栩如生，但很多人都并不熟悉这段历史，包括我，一度也曾错误地认为区块链是中本聪的技术发明，而区块链就像一个早产儿那样安静了很久。它的故事从比特币开始，才慢慢勾画出了自己的轨道。有的时候，我们并不是在等待技术的突破，而是技术在等待我们发现它的光芒。我是一加，将近半个世纪，人们生活在信息时代里，我们习惯了通过邮件、聊天应用、社交媒体肆意交流和传播文字、音乐以及图片，这带来了沟通成本的降低、信息的爆炸。但如果我们需要在数字化世界里传递的是金钱、股票，甚至知识产权等一切有价值的资产呢？
With the Internet of Information, if I send you some money, I've sent you a copy. I can send the same money to somebody else.
And so we still relied on third-party intermediaries, banks, brokers, credit card companies.
This whole notion of decentralization and building these new layers of trust, I think is really important.
Because we have a ledger now that is managed not by individual people, but by a massive group of many computers.
Why people ought to care.
It will touch every single person's life, whether or not they want it to.
为了支持我们的纪录片制作，经济学家 Tapscott 特地从老家多伦多赶到纽约来见我。这位曾经引领互联网时代经济与商业策略研究的数字经济之父，如今将自己的研究重心放到了由比特币带来的新一轮技术浪潮中。几年前，他向全世界贡献了自己的研究成果，一本开启公众对新技术认知的书《区块链革命》。
In 1994, I wrote The Digital Economy, and that book was the first bestseller about the web. And I was asked 20 years later to write the 20th anniversary edition. And I started thinking about, well, if that's what happened in the last 20 years, what will the next 20 bring? And I concluded two big technologies, artificial intelligence and blockchain.
和过去的写书经历不同，这次 Don 邀请了自己的儿子 Alex 和自己一起来完成这本区块链革命的撰写和出版。Alex 也就这样告别了自己的工作，投身进了区块链研究。
Well, and that was initially a tough call for me too, because I had to be so sure that this was going to be a big book and that this was a whole new opportunity for Alex. Before going to him and telling him to leave his big, high-paying, hotshot executive job, making lots of money.
How did he persuade you?
With a really good steak and a really good bottle of wine.
We're going to go to 2000.
What's the most striking discovery out of the research you guys did so far?
We had this epiphany that we were trying to figure out that it's not about Bitcoin. The real opportunity here is the underlying technology of blockchain that makes that work.
If Bitcoin is going to be massively disruptive and influential, what needs to happen for that technology to reach its potential?
We interviewed 100 people, every person in the world who we thought might have something profound to say, and we came up with the notion that this is really the second era of the internet. Yeah, we've had an internet of information, and now we're getting an internet of value.
这是巴西首都巴西利亚城郊的一个村庄。当地人十分热情，用一种特殊的食物招待了我。这是巴西塞拉多草原特有的一种植物，当地人不仅热衷于把它当作水果，还善于用它来加工和烹饪成各种食品，这也成了当地人重要的生计。
No assentamento são 24 famílias que estão assentadas, mas aqui assim, cada ele tem a sua liberdade para poder estar trabalhando em conjunto. A gente pega opiniões de mulheres, né, das mulheres mais idosas, vai ensinando para as mais novas e aí vice-versa. O que eu venho aprendendo no conhecimento por ser mais nova, eu vou passando para as mulheres. Então a gente trabalha assim unânimes, né, num único objetivo.
De baixo ali também.
Which one is picky?
Tem outro pé dali.
The tall one. It doesn't have any fruits.
Abre aqui no chão pra gente.
Esse aqui também.
Jose 和他的同乡希望将他们祖辈相传的烹饪水果的手艺变成一项事业，从而改善经济状况和生活水平。这只需要一笔不大的资金来支持。但在经济社会高度发达的今天，在世界上的很多地方，这依然是一件非常困难的事情。
So as you can see, it needs repair.
Yeah, if it starts raining, it's going to be really bad. Look, it's totally broken.
That's why
Right now, most people don't really interact with the formal economy in a lot of parts of the world because they don't have access to a bank account or because they don't have a clear and enforceable title to their property.
We rely on money. We need to be able to pay each other, to have contracts, to have business, to have a flourishing economy. And we used to use dollars for that every time we paid each other. We relied on the Federal Reserve to not make too many dollars. Then when people stopped doing transactions in cash, and they started doing all their transactions online using credit cards and payment systems like PayPal and Venmo, we rely on a company to actually hold the money for us and hand it to somebody else. And sometimes they screw up, and sometimes they change the records to their own advantage, and sometimes they just don't want to open an account for us. And this leads to unbanked populations that can't get access to capital to build their businesses and their homes.
根据世界银行的数据，全球大约有20亿成年人和1亿6千万个小型企业没有银行账户， 置身于现代金融系统之外。在 Jose 所生活的巴西，有大约6000万成年人口没有银行账户，无缘任何金融服务。Jose 创业需要的是还不到1万美金的贷款，但在巴西似乎没有银行能实现他的愿望。
São coisas que às vezes são fáceis de resolver, mas é muito papel, tem que correr atrás de muita coisa, e quando você chega no final você já está esgotado. E às vezes não consegue.
They get a hard time to access credit to build that from the government and from private banks. And the interest rate is very, very high when they do get access.
How high can that be?
More than 130%. If you go on the credit card, like a more urgent thing, that can go from 1,000 to 3,000%. So we have many people that have been financially excluded for a long time.
Tanaris 是巴西著名的农业和环境管理策划经济学家的女儿，她创立的公司 Moeda 向 Jose 的团队提供了贷款，帮助了他们的创业。
I grew up seeing my father like helping the cooperativism system in Brazil to grow, and it's a system that lacks a lot of opportunities. A lot of the gap between the people that actually need and people that want help and people that need that help. The borrower needs more access.
从2017年3月创立以来 ，Tana 的 Moeda 公司已经至少向巴西18家小型创业公司提供了贷款，成为联合国可持续发展目标委员会的合作伙伴。而 Moeda 并不是一家传统的金融借贷公司，他们平台的核心是区块链技术。
But what we are doing is cutting down the intermediaries. So people can invest directly into people. And we use also blockchain for the identity side, and every transaction that goes through that identity is registered back into the chain. So that builds the trust necessary that I know that I'm investing in that person and that she's spending the money with the purpose that she told me so.
E muito mais. Já imaginou fazer sua indústria com o antigo? Faça cultura. Não perca tempo.
Eu acredito que com a moeda vai ser o projeto mais elaborado. A facilidade que a gente tem em escrever o projeto é mais fácil para conseguir o recurso, porque já são pessoas treinadas, que já sabem bem a dificuldade que é, já entende um pouco dessa burocracia.
在 Don 和 Alex 的眼中，区块链有可能修正的经济问题不仅仅发生在不发达地区。发达国家在享受互联网带来的繁荣的同时，也在承担着代价。
I had to look at what is the economic impact of the internet been. Social impact, it's been great. But when it comes to the economy, we have growing wealth, but declining prosperity.
What does that mean?
Well, it means the economy is growing, but the middle class is shrinking. And to me, this problem of the growing bifurcation of wealth, in particular in the developed world, in the Western world, that's what's behind all of the anger and frustration and even xenophobia and racist attitudes that are growing. And it enables demagogues like Donald Trump to come to power and come up with easy solutions for things, to blame immigrants. Well, one of the biggest ways that this can occur is through data. So data is a new asset class, maybe the most valuable asset class ever. And we create this data, you, me, and everybody. But the data is captured by a small handful of companies that have become enormously wealthy and powerful. They can enter rapidly into all kinds of adjacent industries, or not even adjacent industries. So we're talking about companies like Google and Apple and Facebook and Amazon.
But let's be clear on one thing. Sharing economy companies are not successful because they share. They're successful because they don't share. Most of the value that is captured by these companies is not shared by the people who create it. The people who create value on Uber are drivers and the people who use it. As a user, you are contributing to the value of the platform, but you don't participate in the $65 billion that Uber is worth. That's captured asymmetrically.
其实我们在想，在区块链世界当中 ，Uber 这个公司不需要存在。那其实我去叫辆车，我跟他发生关系，我需要你 Uber 公司在中间干嘛呢？对吧 ？Uber 现在做的事情就是，你不相信他嘛？那我给你做个信用中介，对吧？你可以用这个人，这个人是我们 Uber 的司机。那无需信任的、去中心化的、点对点的，我已经知道他的过往的一些记录了，对，都在 chain 上面，然后我还可以支付，对吧？等等等等这些事情，全在上面，我要 Uber 干嘛呢？
纳什维尔拥有超过300多家知名唱片音乐公司，被美国人称作是音乐之城。乡村音乐殿堂级音乐会 Brando La Pre 1925年就在这个城市诞生。他还成就了 Taylor Swift、Shania Twain、Johnny Cash 等一大批知名音乐人。直到今天，这里依然是大批乐迷和音乐家的聚集地。在很多人的心里，纳什维尔就是美国音乐，美国音乐就是纳什维尔。David Bailey 则把他的区块链传媒公司 BTC Media 安家在这个音乐之城里。他邀请我们来做客，并在一个特别的地方迎接了我。
Satoshi Nakamoto, that's a name I love to say, and we don't know much about him.
When did John film that Ode to Satoshi song?
So I produced that with him here.
Wow!
Yeah, so that was right away in 2014. I think we did that.
Oh, it was 2014. All right.
Then we put it on our podcast and put it up on YouTube and everything. And then Adam Levine at Let's Talk Bitcoin invited us to go out to Texas Bitcoin Conference.
I was watching either Bloomberg or CNBC. And they were literally playing Ode to Satoshi.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah.
You should get some loyalty.
I think musicians can earn a living through cryptocurrencies and through blockchain. And there is a site that I really enjoy called musiccoin.org.
Musiccoin.org.
And they have a streaming website that is similar to a Spotify where you can upload your music. And then every time somebody listens to the track, you earn 1 music coin. And I put it up on Musiccoin, and then I sent an email out to my email list, and within a day I had made $2.
Woo! 今天的纳什维尔，空气中到处飘散着音乐，沿街的酒吧里，新秀们的歌声依然络绎不绝。城市里有数不清的家庭式 studio。有人说，互联网来了之后，这些音乐人的日子却大不如从前，创作的价值大部分都进不了他们的腰包。
The creators of content, like musicians, do not have other humans stealing their content, that their content can be monetized. Today, I write a best-selling song, 1 million streams. I don't get $46,000, I get $35. That's enough to buy a pizza. Won't even get you to the airport in Toronto. So what happened was the Internet of Information broke all of our intellectual property rights and regime. We all started publishing music, treating it as information when it was really an asset belonging to somebody. We didn't have a medium to deal with that. So Apple got involved and said, no, we'll create iTunes and you buy songs. That was silly, because who wants to take possession of the song? You just want to hear the song. And then Spotify got involved and companies like that and created streaming music. And the poor musician is left with crumbs at the end of this whole process, because all these intermediaries took all the value. Well, we can fix that now. And that means that I can feel good about listening to music because I know that the artists are fairly paid.
It's funny, like we are in this musical city and in this historical studio. So what do you think about media, entertainment, and the technology? Usually you don't put these kind of things together.
Yeah. Media traditionally has had a very high cost for being able to communicate an idea somewhere. And the printing press was really a game changer in terms of, for the first time ever, giving people access to ideas from more than just their local village or their local community. How do you determine what information is valuable? The double entry accounting system, which emerged shortly after the printing press in the same part of Europe at the same time.
Around the Renaissance time.
Right. Yeah, they emerged really within 20 years of each other. Those two technologies combined gave us a mechanism to not only communicate things, but also determine the validity or accuracy of the things that were being communicated.
600年过去了，人们的信息传播技术已经从印刷升级到了互联网。然而，复式记账法发明以来，价值信息的记录和围绕价值的信任建立方式却始终没有突破，直到区块链的出现。
Computer is our modern printing press, and
the internet.
Right, and the blockchain is the triple entry accounting system.
Yeah.
Do you trust banks to hold your money?
Yes.
Probably yes.
No, here in America, no.
No. No.
Do you trust government's election results?
Maybe 50%.
There's some doubts. Yes.
No.
I don't trust none of them.
Do you trust these celebrities' words on media?
No.
Media?
Depends on the celebrity. Conditionally.
Sometimes. Maybe about 75% of it, yeah.
Do you trust the credit company who are giving you credit score and have access to your private data?
Yes.
No.
Nope. I don't trust no one.
It depends on the company.
I believe what they are saying is true. Do I believe that they're using my data responsibly? No.
To me, trust is really the foundation of effective societies. And trust in business is the expectation that the other party will be honest, that they'll be considerate of your interests, that they'll be accountable and abide by their commitments, and that they'll have a degree of openness and transparency.
Since 2008, you may recall the financial crisis, there's been a crisis of confidence and trust in a lot of different institutions. All the institutions we thought were acting in our interests, governments, banks, and others, we realized weren't always doing that and could be flawed and fallible.
And trust in transactions using blockchain is achieved not by somebody in the middle, but it's achieved in many cases by cryptography, by clever code, and by collaboration, which is why Alex and I call it the trust protocol. And this holds vast opportunity and promise to build a better society.
前段时间的特朗普的选举，然后希拉里还因此说特朗普这个操纵了选票。我记得9月份的时候，美国那边也出来一个新闻，就是说他们目前的计票箱很容易被黑客入侵，一个黑客大概花了1-2分钟时间就入侵了一个计票箱，把里面的数据随便改。
中国深圳一家创业技术公司正在研发用区块链的技术来改变人类社会生活中最常见的民主活动——投票。
30月份的时候，有几个区的领导找到我们说，人大选举就是区县一级的人大选举啊，说需要在区块链上来投票。我觉得这个确实是一个非常好的一个点。
瑞士楚格，一个人口不到3万的小城市。几百年前，这里开始全民选举，用最简单、最古老的模式表达人民的意志，至今还保留着纸质选票方式。
We vote in a very classical way. We have it in one country. They come together in a place. They vote by hand. When I was a youngster, we filled out the voting paper, and then we went to a public office or to a school to give it in. And a lot of people feel more comfortable to have it on a paper. Digital way could be easier. You can vote everywhere on your mobile, but you have to be sure it's very secure.
我们研究的时候都发现了，你作为一个投票人，没有办法验证你的票真的在最终的那个结果里边。中心化的投票系统一样，只要在数据库里面一改， 所有的全改了，因为你都是从那个数据库里取的。像那个投票箱呢，你只要是在投票箱里面把数据改了，你出去的肯定是假的。但是在区块链这一块就很难做到这一点，大家都可能同时统计，那这个数据就是确认的，不能被修改的，它需要很多的节点认同才能够改一个数据。
2018年6月，楚国的选举终于发生了变化，他们进行了一次区块链选举系统的测试。
It functions very well. It will have a positive impact because the technology is not centralized, it's decentralized, and it can be even that some today centralized services which state offers, registers and so on will be replaced by blockchain applications. Finally, that's the point. You will trust a system and not an authority.
区块链重塑信任，在这股趋势下，许多传统行业变革的力量还是来自于行业内部。前美国华盛顿邮报的创新与商业化策略副总裁 Draper 今年年初离任，为的就是改变传统出版业。
Whether you're a consumer that's reading something on a website or reading something from a creator, or you're a creator that's about to submit something or place it somewhere else, there's no transparency there today. Is this true? Is this valuable? And what is the value of this creator based on their past history and based on their readability? However, now they don't know, right? What is the transparency behind these ideas? Blockchain, I think, can solve for that. When it comes to being able to record information on an immutable ledger and be able to pinpoint back and do kind of proof of existence and timestamp on the blockchain. So anything you create, whether that's a song, whether that's a piece of art, physical, right, or digital, or a piece of content, you have the one opportunity to stake within a marketplace and build reputation, which we believe you will take with you everywhere. And we're not saying this is true and this isn't true, but we're saying, hey, here's under the hood and what's all this information and how did we get here? And then allow the users, right, or consumers to be able to make those sorts of decisions.
哎，一家，你好，你好，你好。
陆阳曾担任路易威登中国区首席信息官，而现在他创办维链，也为奢侈品行业带来了良药。
2015年我们开始做 VChain 的时候，启动的这个一个 application 就是针对奢侈品的防伪的，是我们做的 LVMH 旗下的这个纪梵希。我们帮他去把他的这个一些产品，比如说这个包包啊，奢侈品的包包，注册在 VChain 的这个 blockchain 上，来进行这个内部的 supply chain 的管理，透明供应链的一方面的管理。它这个是用来内部的，就比如
里面是有贴一个，
它有芯片的，
在里面是吧？
对，
坐在里面。哦。
这一批货叫 bulk retail，然后是发到中国去的，包括 client ID 是什么？那如果我们 go deeper 的话，就可以知道 client ID 里面具体是谁，包括它的这个整个的一个 history。这个是法国费朗酒庄的酒，其实现在你去 DIG 的超市就可以买得到。对。
它上面是已经装了一个芯片吗？还是？
对，这个就是芯片。
它就这么轻这么小的一个。
对，它就像一张贴纸一样的。
对呀。
你比如说我拿这个手机，对吧？
验证中，
验证中，然后它就会显示这瓶酒的详细的信息。我觉得奢侈品这个行业呢，它也蛮特殊的，因为我自己在里面做好多年嘛。很多时候它的这个 manufacturer 它不是企业自己内部的，它是第三方的。那这时候呢，你用这种不可篡改的技术或者不可篡改的系统，来让他们去更新一些数据呢，其实这个时候可以让数据本身会更加可信。
You know, people say privacy is dead, get over it. Just look at the value of the 10 largest companies in the world. Half of them are data aggregators. Facebook, Amazon, Google, Tencent, these kinds of companies. And it turns out that they control more information about you than you control about you. And they know you better than you know you. Well, I don't want to overstate that because in the end, there are terabytes of data about you and about me and about everyone else. All in the world, and it's not coming back. But I think going forward, we can put in place systems that ensure that people have more agency and more control over their data. And I think that's something we should aspire to.
Don 和 Alex 描述的区块链时代里，价值可以自由流通，信任将被重塑。 而我们和这个世界将会如何步入这个新的时代呢？
When we wrote the book, we said that in 5 years, the financial services industry is going to be virtually unrecognizable. And we were wrong, because it's happening today.
从比特币第一个真正意义上成功区块链应用开始，就注定了金融将是这场革新浪潮的第一主战场。
And there are lots of new technologies that make up this fourth industrial age. And we argued that there was one in particular that was going to have a larger impact. Financial services companies today have no choice but to take it seriously because it could represent either a big threat or a big opportunity depending on your perspective. The threat is that disintermediation removes financial companies from all sorts of markets and that they lose revenue. In the process, they'll probably have to blow up the way they do things today, and that's something that scares a lot of banks. The inverse of that is that they could use this technology to reduce cost and friction and also to enter new markets and create new products and services.
Hi. I'm here for Cooper.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
We're an enterprise software firm, and we sell enterprise software to clients.
How many members do you guys have?
Large-scale financial service organizations, banks, asset managers, insurance companies. Today, we have over 200 members and partners around the world. This is HSBC out of the UK, and Barclays, and Bank of America, and Ito in Brazil. I mean, you go across the entire world. We believe in empowering financial institutions to do their jobs better, rather than completely upending and disrupting the system itself.
R3的合作伙伴和服务对象主要来自金融行业，就像一个金融产业的大联盟。这个联盟聚集了来自各国的央行、一线商业银行以及政府管理部门等金融领域的顶级玩家。R3的对外事务主管 Charlie Cooper 告诉我，整个金融行业在携手探索和开创区块链的革新之路。
So what kind of benefits are they looking for in this kind of partnership or membership?
The financial services customers have recognized that they spend an incredible amount of money on any given year in back and middle office services and various different software platforms, in the need to reconcile trade mistakes and the overhead involved in the financial services markets that most people don't see because they're used to dealing with their broker or you're used to dealing with their banker when they're taking out cash. There are thousands and thousands of people backing up every one person that your typical consumer sees. All that back office stuff is based on incredibly dated systems and processes that can be completely overhauled. So many of our institutions are looking at dramatic cost savings and greater efficiencies in terms of pulling that out of the system. Blockchain at its core, in a very simple way of saying it, is a ledger, just like you have in any financial activity, which records transactions between various different parties. And what it allows people to do is know that what I see in my copy of the ledger is the same as what you see in your copy of the ledger. That might not sound like a big deal, or for many people nowadays in 2018, they assume that's already the way that it is. It's actually not the way that it is. So that's really quite an innovation, this decentralized computer system that allows us to record financial transactions with each other and know that we have the right information.
Do you guys face any challenges along the way?
Banks spend billions and billions of dollars a year on a set of software solutions that are already in place. What we need to do is, in the first phase, is integrate our blockchain solution, Corda, with their legacy systems, and then over time replace those systems. But that's not something that happens overnight.
2015年，摩根大通的前高管、全球大宗商品主管 Bryce Masters 离职，加入了当时成立还不到1年的区块链公司 Digital Asset， 出任 CEO。这一消息在当时让整个华尔街哗然 ，Digital Asset 的这家区块链技术公司也跟着引起了关注。
Digital Asset have a great mix of deep financial services experience. They've been there, done that, know why things are the way that they are. So the mission of Digital Asset is really to look at how we can apply this technology to existing financial markets. So our focus is on capital markets, particularly post-trade. And one of the issues there in the clearing and settlement process of determining who owns which stock at the end of the day is that there are multiple different institutions who all play a different role. There's the buyer, the seller, they each have a broker, they each have a custodian, there's a settlement bank, a clearinghouse, a central securities depository, and each of these different institutions have to keep their own record of the information and then reconcile that between all of them. So by applying a blockchain to that, we can create a network where that is simultaneously kept up to date in real time without leaking confidential information. So we've moved beyond the sort of cost-saving aspect of just reducing and eliminating reconciliation, which is huge, to people looking at how they can apply this to be more like a tech company, to be more agile, to provide new services, new products faster to the market, and actually expand their revenues as well.
R3 和 Digital Asset 在古老的金融业中显得格外年轻，借着技术创新的势头，已经在行业里崭露头角。他们的快速崛起似乎暗示着整个金融业的格局很快会有巨大的变化，而传统的金融巨头们并不想坐以待毙。
But do you think some of the financial institutions will be replaced?
We don't believe that.
They still have a very relevant role to play in the ecosystem.
And I think the most fantastic piece, of course, since I'm so much into blockchain, is this wonderful blockchain cube. Yeah. You couldn't really understand how important that paper became and how many millions and billions we're now, investing. Technology moving on, and we can see how the technology evolves significantly from that paper.
In which year did NASDAQ start to look into this new technology?
We started looking into this already in 2013. So we started very, very early, start to experiment. And we were actually first in the world to issue a true company share on a ledger, on a distributed share ledger.
How was that experience to launch a share on ledger?
We feel safe with the technology. It can support what the security, and it can fulfill a lot of nice features, and you can get, for example, you get a full transparent chain about all the history of a share, for example. That is very important for unlisted companies, for example, to make sure to prove that you have issued your share and then who has bought and sold the shares.
So that means NASDAQ is playing a different kind of role. It's not a marketplace anymore, it's more like a technology provider.
I think we can see how we have two roles here. We have done a lot of experimenting, piloting, etc. And now we more or less left the R&D phase and moved into building products. And now we use that experience, we use the NASDAQ financial framework components that we rely upon, and to be able then to efficiently build a new solution then for the fund market, for example. We are the biggest provider of fintech technology. We could also offer the same technology to other marketplaces around the globe.
But is that possible in the future, like stock trading will be peer-to-peer as well? Like settlement can be much easier and faster and cheaper.
Can we share records more trustworthy with the members and clients than today? That's a very interesting area to be in. But the other part is also to see where do we have markets that today doesn't function well. But I think that trading needs to be centralized.
I think the intermediaries fulfill quite important roles, both from a KYC process, so they basically check that you have the right identity to play in the market. They also provide kind of netting, reconciliation and reporting functions, and they are also regulated in many ways.
So do you think now financial industry has a trust issue and we need a blockchain to make that better?
We're playing in a world in the financial service industry where it is a lot of trust already. People have invested a lot, both regulatory, legally, in establishing that trust. So the technology doesn't really need to help us with that. I think the challenge by introducing this technology into an ecosystem is that suddenly you need to consider the overall economy of that ecosystem. And a number of players, they sit on legacy technologies, they have already invested in that. So I think even if the technology itself can provide the inefficiencies you're looking for, it means that all parties might not be ready to accept it and adopt to it due to that they have different timelines or investment horizons and blah, blah, blah.
不管是探访的传统金融企业，还是接触的行业新秀，大家说到区块链对于金融产业带来的影响，似乎都比较集中在交易结算环节的优化以及数据的收集管理。如果这些愿景都能实现，确实可以给整个行业节省大量的成本和人工，提高效率。但如果是这样，那区块链只是一个高信用级别的数据库技术工具而已，还谈不上对于我们的生活带来真正颠覆性的改变。它真的就仅此而已吗？
We've seen lots of new emerging technologies, platforms, and applications. And so much has changed that we decided it was time to update the book.
Well, I think that blockchain will and is transforming the financial services industry, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
2013年底，一个不到20岁的少年发布了一份白皮书，区块链的故事又有了新的篇章。
我认识他的时候，他只有19岁。
Brilliant young man.
惊为天人。
I'm sure he gets mobbed by people everywhere.
This guy named Vitalik Buterin.
UNICEF as an organization works in 135 countries around the world and has more than 12,000 staff who are dedicated to solving problems